I am here with actor, writer, Mr. Roger Guenveur Smith. Thank you so much for being here, taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with me. You have 3 performances coming up here at the newly renovated Charles H. Wright Museum Theater, featuring 3, I don't want to say characters, but icons. We have Frederick Douglass, Otto Frank, and Jean-Michel Basquiat. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 1 character, 1 show, and you're delivering it to us coming up. Why did you decide to bring those 3 people to life on stage here in Detroit?
Well, I was very graciously invited to do so. And I thought that this was a good time, and what a great place to do these 3 pieces, Frederick Douglass Now, Otto Frank, and in honor of Jean-Michel Basquiat. I call it the triple play, which unfortunately the Padres got last night against my Dodgers to end the game. But wow, what an opportunity to inaugurate such a beautiful new space here at the Wright, trying to do the right thing always. And what a moment. We're in a season of reflection. We're in a season, hopefully, of change. And we are in a season in which we must take a really good look at ourselves, where we are and where we want to go.
And touch on these 3 characters as you talk about this season of change, how people are reflecting and the direction that we want to go in, and touch a little bit on each character and what people will see and how those items will come into play during the performances with Frederick Douglass, Otto Frank, and Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Frederick Douglass, of course, is one of our great American heroes who was self-taught, but he did not liberate only himself. He sought to liberate an entire generation of Americans along with him. His wife, Anna, very graciously lent herself to his liberation struggle. She sewed sailor's uniform for him, which allowed him to escape from Maryland, eventually to New York City, and eventually to Massachusetts. They worked hand in hand, Frederick and Anna Murray Douglass. So to take then their story into this new century, I think is a good challenge to have, and I think a necessary challenge for us. What he achieved as a writer, as an abolitionist, as a pioneering feminist, was something that continues to resonate in our present moment, in which we are considering the dynamism of the political process, which might in fact be led by a woman.
Perhaps. It could be. That could be the next change that comes.
It could be. Maybe. Otto Frank was the father of the diarist Anne Frank. Anne Frank's diary has been read by more people than any other book, with the exception of the Bible. Otto Frank lived a long and productive life. He was the only survivor of his immediate family, having lost his wife and his 2 daughters to the Nazi death camps. And the diary was actually a gift that he had given to his beloved daughter, Anna, for her 13th birthday. And it was presented to him after the war because it was discovered that she would not be coming back. She would not be reunited with that diary. But then here he is, trying to make his way through all of these pages.
And it took him quite some time to get to reading that
diary.
diary.
Time to read through that diary and to decide what he was going to do with it. Was he going to destroy it, burn it, keep it for himself? Was he going to share it with the world? And he decided to share it with the world because he thought that that's what she wanted. And he went about that process. It was, of course, adapted for the radio, for the stage, for the screen. We continue to see Anne Frank in a variety of media, and she speaks to us in a very important and necessary way. She demonstrates to us the strength of a child's vision and what we do when we decimate populations and take away the genius of our children. And we see in this present international moment children evaporating.
So a lot of connection from years past, gone by, and still seeing history repeating itself, and making sure we continue to tell the story to hopefully impact people and change minds through your presentation of Otto Frank, which is on Friday here at the Charles H. Wright Museum. And then you're going to close it out with Jean-Michel Basquiat.
In honor of Jean-Michel Basquiat, who was a friend of mine. And I'm sure most of us know that we lost him tragically at the age of 27. And he left a tremendous legacy of work. He was prolific. I think, like Jimi Hendrix, who we also lost at age 27, both of these men knew that they had limited time on the planet. So they worked. They worked so that we would benefit from their genius, from their ability to resuscitate the spirit of the world.
As we reflect on those three, once again, Frederick Douglass, Otto Frank, Jean-Michel Basquiat, your friend, what is it that you're hoping that people will take away from your performances here in Detroit?
Well, I don't want people to simply walk out of this beautiful theater thinking, wow, that was a great show, or wow, wasn't it horrible what happened way back then, or wow, wasn't he a great artist?
Yeah, do you want them to be able to apply something to today's walk?
I would like to think that we walk out of here, that we run out of here, prepared to recommit ourselves to the truth, to recommit ourselves to beauty, to recommit ourselves to creating a future which does not exclude, an inclusive future which embraces the young artists, the young writers, the young abolitionists and feminists. That's why we're in Detroit.
You have a passion for history and bringing it to life and hoping that people discover the truth. Sharing this history, in what other ways, in addition to sharing history, do you think that people can discover the truth, being sometimes so far removed from it?
Well, I think that literacy is key. And of course, it was illegal for Frederick Douglass to read or write. And he had to do that in secret. He had to literally go underground to impart what he had learned to the many other comrades that he had who were still enslaved and who wouldn't have the opportunity to escape as he did. So I think that that is really key, and literacy is not simply the ability to read and write. It's the ability to come into a beautiful gallery such as this and to interpret this work in a way which expands our consciousness. And so the cultural literacy is not simply about reading and writing, it's also about sculpture, it's also about photography, it's also about painting, it's also about dance, about the theater. It's about all of those things that we have done, continue to do, and hopefully we'll continue to make our mark in for years and decades and generations to come.
Roger, literacy played a huge role in your upbringing. Your mother had a library at home, and you were a book buff, a history buff.
I was the kid who read the Encyclopedia Britannica for fun. I was the kid who was obsessed with a book called The World's Great Men of Color, edited by J.A. Rogers, which my mom had in our home library. I was the kid who read the narrative of the life of an American slave, written by himself, by Frederick Douglass, 1845. I was about 10 years old. I didn't know all of the words in there, but it obviously made an impression upon me. And when I was looking for an opportunity to do a solo performance, when I was an undergraduate, I thought, Frederick Douglass. Well, where did that come from? That came from that very slim volume that was in our very modest home library.
And as you move through your journey from those books in the library at home into college, you were at Yale studying history.
Yes.
But you decided that you should audition for the drama school at Yale. Now, did you have a undiscovered acting bug that you knew about that everyone else didn't know about, or was this something that you decided, like, hey, I want to try this?
No,
How did that come about?
I had always been interested in performance, and you know, the first Frederick Douglass solo performance was called An Evening with Frederick Douglass, which was very long evening, and my own mom told me that it was too long. So you know, you need to edit, you need to cut.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, because if your mom is tired of watching it, you know you have to do something about it.
But going to school for history made sense to me, but also auditioning for the drama school made sense to me. And I auditioned and I was accepted into a distinguished class which included Angela Bassett and John Turturro and Charles Dutton. And I got to work with Mr. James Earl Jones, whom we recently lost, and he invited me into his dressing room. I was just a student moving, you know, furniture around, but he was so kind and so giving. And his notes took up the entire script. He was dyslexic. And as we know, he stuttered as a boy, and he overcame that, obviously. Mm-hmm. So it was fascinating to be welcomed into that world and to be given that kind of inspiration. And I'm hoping that I can inspire in the same way, passing the baton on to the next generation.
I'm definitely sure, I'm sure that you are inspiring the next generation, bringing heroes like Frederick Douglass to life, bringing your experiences with meeting James Earl Jones to the next generation. I know that they can feel that you're passionate about it, you're humble about what you're doing, and very passionate about sharing it with the future. So I don't think that's anything that you have to worry about.
I appreciate your vote of confidence.
Absolutely.
And I know you're registered, right?
You know I'm registered to vote. I'm going to be rocking the vote. Right. Yes, absolutely. You're going to be there too, right?
Of course.
We got to, yes, for sure. So we have the college days. You decided to take a leap into acting, something that you already knew you wanted to do. Speak to the person today who's in college, who may not be as willing to make a change in their college career because somebody said, you have to figure out what you want to do, you have to stick to it, you can't change your mind, you don't have that much time. But sometimes you have to take those risks. What would you tell that college student who's saying, I really do love history, but I would love to explore psychology, and I don't know how my mom's gonna feel about that?
I would tell them, come to the theater here at the Wright Museum on Saturday night, because we'll be doing a play called In Honor of Jean-Michel Basquiat. Jean-Michel's father, Gerard, was a political refugee. He came here in 1955 from Haiti. And he wanted to be an accountant, and he began his working life in New York City unable to speak English, pushing garments in the garment district. And he worked up, and he obviously learned the English language very well as Spanish and French and Haitian Creole, and became a distinguished businessman. That his son, Jean-Michel, wanted to be an artist was not really in his deck of cards. It's not really what he had planned for his eldest child. And Jean had to demonstrate to his father over the course of his career that this is why he was on the planet. And that took courage. It took conflict at some points between father and son. But there was a beautiful moment where Jean had his first big gallery show, rented a limousine, went to his father's home that he had left as a teenager, knocked on the door. His father comes to the door. And Jean says, "Papa, I made it."
And he was able to show his father, here, this is what I've been pouring into all this time. It may not have been what you wanted me to be, but it's who I'm meant to be. Something I can definitely see touches you so dearly, your friend Jean-Michel, and him being able to show that courage, to stand up during the conflict, and to persevere. Yeah.
And to share that love.
Yeah, to share the love, something that we definitely need today. Spike Lee.
Yes.
You were able to come in at such just a creative time with Do the Right Thing, School Days, and collaborate and work with him.
I never thought that I would have a career in film. I was really happy to be playing a season at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. And I went to see this film called She's Gotta Have It. And I sat through it twice. And I said, who is this guy, Spike Lee, and what is he doing next? So I was able to finagle a cattle call audition.
How did you finagle this cattle call? Is this top secret?
Just like everybody else. I mean,
Okay.
I stood in line with 100 other people to tell a joke, to do, sing a song, and do a little bit from the script for this film called School Days. And Spike Lee thought that I was demented enough to play a, fraternity pledge named Yoda, and we've been working together ever since. But yes, very blessed to be in the same generation as Shelton Jackson, Spike Lee, and I think that we have seen eye to eye, although he's considerably shorter than I am. But we do see eye to eye culturally, historically, politically, and it's been a great collaborative venture, and it's actually unparalleled in the American cinema. There's no actor, director, writer, producer collaborations that are comparable to the one that I have enjoyed with Spike.
I want to get to that, but before we elaborate on that, you had a lot of creative ability when it came to Do the Right Thing.
Yes.
There was the script, but your character wasn't even in the script. You were able to build and create your character. What was the inspiration behind Smiley?
Well, I didn't realize what the inspiration was specifically until after I had done Smiley. I knew from the draft of Do the Right Thing, which Spike shared with me very generously, that Malcolm X had a big influence on this piece. There was a Malcolm quote which was attached to the script as a prologue, not the one that is used at the end of the film, but another one. So I knew that somehow Malcolm was, working on this thing. And Spike gave me this draft and said, take this home, Roger, and come back the next morning and see what you come up with. And I say, okay. So I started thinking about Malcolm, and then I started thinking about Martin, and then I started thinking about the whole issue of having black people up on this wall, the Wall of Fame. And then I started thinking about this photograph of Malcolm X shaking hands with Martin Luther King, which at that time was a very, very obscure image. But Spike knew it, and I knew it.
Right.
And I said, okay, well, what if this guy has a stack of these photographs that he's personally colorizing, and he's trying to sell them up and down the block, and then at the end, when the pizza parlor burns down, then why not put this picture of Malcolm and Martin up on the wall after it's been burned down? He said, yeah, I bet that's a good idea. Yeah, I like that. The rest is history. Right. As we went through the film, improvising scenes, Smiley actually became the arsonist. He was the one who burned down the pizza parlor. And when I was thinking about, where did this come from? Because people were asking me. In fact, people had thought that Spike had hired a disabled person to play Smiley, which I suppose is a compliment to what I was doing.
Because you were that invested.
But I lived in Bed-Stuy when we were doing it, and a lot of people saw me on set, and they, were reacting to me in a certain way in the community. So after the film came out, people said, well, where did that come from, when they realized that that wasn't really me. And I started thinking, and I thought about a man who sold the LA Sentinel newspaper, the black newspaper in Los Angeles. And my father would go every Thursday night to support him and get his paper from him.
And you'd be with him.
And I would be with him, and I'd be looking up at this very tall man who talked like this and said, thank you, every Thursday. And then I thought about, okay, well, that must have been influential. A young man who was a great athlete at my high school, but he was hit by a car. And he talked like that too, and he became the locker room attendant after having been a great athlete. And these guys passing out towels. He talked like that, but he had an amazing memory for athletic statistics. He could name any end zone, any, team, who scored what in what game, and all that. He had an amazing memory for that. So I said, oh, okay, yeah. And he had an influence as well. And then I started thinking about, where did the artistry come from? Well, there was a guy named Jean-Michel Basquiat. who was a friend of mine. And he, of course, his signature was the crown, which I used on top of Martin King, and the X, crossing out words, which I used on Malcolm X. And the great, tragedy of this thing is, when I was in Brooklyn playing Smiley, creating this character, doing Do the Right Thing, Jean-Michel expired in Manhattan.
How did that impact you during that time? Losing your friend while filming Do the Right Thing?
It's something that continues to resonate with me today. And I suppose that's why I'm doing this piece called In Honor of Jean-Michel Basquiat, because it's necessary for me as a friend, as a brother, to share with the world what he means, continues to mean to me and to the world. And I went to visit his grave in Brooklyn. And it was All Saints' Day. Here comes a man, a little man in a big top hat with a megaphone. And behind him, there's a whole group of people. And he's got a little boy next to him, probably his son, and he's holding up a picture of Jean-Michel Basquiat. And, he's in the megaphone. People are looking. It's a celebrity grave tour. So he says, protege of Andy Warhol, in the megaphone. And I said, hey, time out. The deceased was a friend of mine. I'll do this. He said, do you need the megaphone? I said, no, I don't need the megaphone. And I simply said, Jean-Michel Basquiat was a great American artist. He was born in Brooklyn. He died in Manhattan, but his work lives on. Obviously, the dead continue to resonate with the living, because there was a woman at the grave next to Jean's grave. She was planting flowers. And then people left, and the woman stood up. She thanked me. And she said, I'm so sorry about your friend. He was so young. I said, yes, 27. She said, what happened? And I said, his heart, it stopped beating. And then she made a gesture to the grave next to Jean's and said simply, my sister, cancer. And we embraced.
I thank you for bringing dignity to that moment during that time when people wanted to go on a celebrity tour, not realizing that this is someone's loved one, this is someone's friend. And going back to what you said, having the courage to stand up, to bring that dignity to your friend and to tell his story and without the excitement, without the hoorah, and just maintaining the humanity of it. And then having the moment with someone else who was grieving as well, and coming together over that makes such a huge difference. So thank you for that.
Well,
absolutely.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share that story.
For sure.
I'll be sharing it this Saturday night
at the Charles H. Wright Museum.
At the Charles H. Wright Museum to conclude a 3-night solo performance circus.
A circus?
Yeah, sure. We're gonna have some light moments here.
Okay.
Do some juggling and some fire eating.
Oh man. Swords too?
Exactly. I'm going to swallow some swords.
I'm here for it. And I think everyone else should be here for it too at the Charles H. Wright Museum. Roger Guenveur Smith, performing the work, well, his work, bringing to life Frederick Douglass, Otto Frank, and his friend in honor of Jean-Michel Basquiat. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me. It's been a joy, a delight, very insightful, and I look forward to your performances coming up here in Detroit at the Charles H. Wright Museum.
Why don't we close out with a little Otto Frank?
Absolutely. Take it away.
Tonight, our hearts are enjoined around this small table. There are 8 of us. That is infinity. But soon there will be only one of us. That is a tragedy. A play within a play, wherein the players are here today and gone tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow. No tears, no sorrow. Quick note to self, there are many who have lost more and will continue to lose. And this is the lesson of this hour. Miss Billie Holiday's blues, the strange fruit getting stranger.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. An excerpt from Otto Frank, performed by Roger Guenveur Smith. Thank you so much.